Intelligence quotient, IQ, is a concept and score derived from various standardized tests that attempt to measure intelligence. In other words, it is a form of quantification of human intelligence. There are several types of intelligence: logico-mathematical, visual-spatial, verbal-linguistic, interpersonal, emotional. Intelligence measurable by IQ tests refers specifically to mental agility, the ability and speed of comprehension, the ease of reasoning. By the nature of the method of determination, we can say that it is the closest to logical mathematical intelligence. Intelligence is often confused with wisdom, knowledge, memory, or other abilities of the human mind. This confusion and the many different types of intelligence means that the definition of this concept is strongly influenced by the context in which it is used. William Stern defined intelligence as the individual's general ability to consciously adapt his thinking to new demands. It is the spiritual capacity for general adaptation to the new demands and conditions of life. The first psychometric tests to measure intelligence were developed by Alfred Binet in the early 20th century. What are the IQ values? IQ test scores fall into three broad groups: below average, average, and above average. They can be used for a wide range of purposes: educational assessment and diagnosis of intellectual disability, cognitive research, evaluation of job candidates, assessment of cognitive abilities, including memory and attention of the individual. Below average IQ level 91-100 represents below average intelligence. The score is achieved by approximately 25% of the population. IQ level 81-90, people with this score can be successful in professional occupations, represents 10% of the population. IQ level 71-80 shows a lower degree of mental impairment, identified in 10% of the population. IQ level 51-70 indicates mild mental impairment, which can occur in 7% of the population. IQ level 21-50 represents a moderate mental impairment that can be identified in 2% of the population. IQ level below 20 is a clear indication of severe mental impairment. People with this score are uneducable, dependent on the help of others. They live in a world of their own and do not perceive the outside world. It is characteristic of 0.2% of the population. Average IQ. The average IQ of a human is 100. IQ level 101-110. These values are considered average. People with scores in this range finish higher education with some difficulty, but can compensate through work. Scores are identified in 25% of the population. Above average IQ. The highest known IQ factor of a human today is over 240. IQ level above 140. This is a very high score. With this level, there are about 0.2% of the population. The percentage of intelligent people with an IQ well above average, considered geniuses. IQ level 131-140, achieved by a few individuals, less than 3% of the population. IQ level 121-130, also above average. People with these values graduate from university easily and have extraordinary results. The score is achieved by about 6% of the population. IQ level 111-120, also above average intelligence. People with this score have to be more industrious, but the results are very good. It is achieved by about 12% of the population. Gaussian distribution of intelligence. According to this theory, all variables tend to cluster around one value. That is, whatever we measure, if we are dealing with large enough numbers, should be able to be plotted as a bell. The Gaussian distribution, also known as the normal distribution, is a bell-shaped curve, and it is assumed that during any measurement the values will follow a normal distribution with an equal number of measurements above and below the mean value. Intelligence test results follow the bell curve. When the bell curve is used in psychological testing, the graph demonstrates a normal distribution of a trait, in this case intelligence in the human population. Many human traits naturally follow the bell curve. For example, if you lined up all your female co-workers by height, it is likely that a large group of them would have an average height for a woman of 162 m, 173 m. This group would fit in the center of the bell curve, representing the average height for women in the world. There would be fewer women standing closer than 155 m. The same would be true for women above average height, those standing closer to 175 m. The trick to finding a bell curve in nature is to use a large sample size. Without a large sample size, a bell curve is less likely to represent the larger population. The same principles apply to intelligence test scores. Individuals obtain a score called an intelligence quotient, IQ. Over the years, different types of IQ tests have evolved, but the way the scores are interpreted remains the same. The average score on an IQ test is 100. Standard deviations describe how the data are dispersed in a population and provide context to large data sets. The bell curve, Gauss curve, uses standard deviation to show how all scores are dispersed from the mean score. In modern IQ testing, a standard deviation is 15 points. So a score of 85 would be described as one standard deviation below the mean. Any IQ score that falls one standard deviation above and below the mean, between 85 and 115, is considered average, and 82% of the population has IQ scores in this range. An IQ score of 130 or above is considered a higher level. How IQ is measured. An IQ test is an assessment that measures a range of cognitive abilities and provides a score that is intended to serve as a measure of an individual's abilities. IQ tests are most commonly administered by psychologists. In order to understand what these scores really mean, it is essential to look at exactly how the scores on these tests are calculated. Today, many tests are standardized and scores are obtained by comparing individual performance to norms for the individual's age group. Although many tests use similar methods to obtain their scores, it is important to keep in mind that each test is different and scoring methods may not be the same from one test to another. Around the world, there are several scales for measuring IQ. Therefore, when measuring IQ, we must also take into account the test used. For example, the maximum score that can be obtained on a Stanford-Binet test is 160, and on Cattell tests a maximum score of 161 or 183 is obtained, depending on the variant. Tests to measure IQ. Intelligence tests are a series of tasks designed to measure the ability to make abstractions, learn, and cope with new situations. The IQ that can be measured by tests is the person's cognitive ability, speed of comprehension and deduction. There are several types of intelligence tests which are very different. The vast majority are used for children, but some can be administered to adults. Cognitive Assessment System, Kaufman Assessment Battery for Children, Stanford-Binet Intelligence Scale, Universal Nonverbal Intelligence Test, Wechsler Intelligence Scale, Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children, Woodcock-Johnson Test of Cognitive Ability, Stanford-Binet Test. The Stanford-Binet is the American adaptation of the original French Binet-Simon test. It was first introduced in 1916 by Louis Terman, a psychologist at Stanford University. The individually administered test, revised in 1937, 1960, 1973, 1986 and 2003, assesses individuals aged 2 or older and is designed for use primarily on children. The Stanford-Binet test consists of a series of age-graded problems involving arithmetic, memory, and vocabulary skills. IQ was originally calculated as the ratio of a person's mental age to their chronological physical age multiplied by 100. Thus, if a 10-year-old child had a mental age of 12, i.e. took the test at the level of a 12-year-old, the child would be assigned an IQ score of 1210 x 100, so 120. A score of 100, for which mental age equals chronological age, is average. Scores above 100 are above average and scores below 100 are below average. Johns Hopkins test. Lately, the concept of mental age has begun to be discredited. Intelligence tests have caused a great deal of controversy over the types of mental abilities that constitute intelligence and whether IQ adequately represents these abilities, with the debate centering on cultural bias in test construction and standardization procedures. Critics have charged that intelligence tests favor groups from wealthier backgrounds and discriminate against less privileged racial, ethnic, or social groups. Consequently, psychologists have sought to develop culture-free tests that more accurately reflect an individual's native ability. One such example is the Johns Hopkins Perception Test, developed by Leon Rosenberg in the early 1960s to measure the intelligence of preschool children. The child must try to match random shapes. Regular geometric shapes such as circles, squares, and triangles are avoided. Solutions for raising IQ. Here are some activities you can do to improve your different areas of intelligence, from reasoning and planning to problem solving and more. Memory activities. Memory activities can help improve not only memory, but also reasoning and language skills. In fact, memory games have been used in research studies to explore how memory relates to language and object knowledge. Reasoning and language are both used as measures of intelligence, meaning that memory activities can go on to develop intelligence. Activities involving memory training include puzzles, crossword puzzles, concentration or matching card games, Sudoku. Executive control activities. Executive control is the ability to control complex cognitive activities. It is part of the executive function, which also includes executive management and regulation. Research suggests that executive function is closely related to fluid reasoning, an aspect of human intelligence. Activities involving training in executive control include Scrabble, Pictionary, visual spatial reasoning activities. Visual spatial reasoning involves mental processes related to physical representations. In one study, researchers found that improving visual spatial reasoning led to an increase in IQ test scores. In that study, memory and executive control activities were used in part to help improve participants' visual spatial reasoning. Activities involving visual spatial training included mazes, 3D models, unfolded prisms, games and online IQ tests. Many of the games and activities listed can also be played online. There are also online IQ games that contain activities that work many of the areas of the brain mentioned above. Although these IQ games and tests cannot accurately measure one's IQ, they can still be a great way to develop intelligence. Relational skills. Relational frame theory refers to the development of human cognition and language through relational associations. Research in 2011 showed that using relational frame theory as an intervention can significantly improve IQ scores in children. A more recent study using this intervention also found improvements in IQ, verbal reasoning and numerical reasoning. Activities involving relational training include language learning books, object comparisons, sum comparisons, musical instruments. You don't have to become the next famous musician to benefit from learning a musical instrument. One study found that musicians have a better working memory than non-musicians. New languages. You'd be surprised to know that more than half the world's population is bilingual. It should come as no surprise that learning more than one language is good for the human brain, and the sooner the better. A recent study investigated the relationship between early language learning and IQ. The results indicated that language learning through speech and interaction from 18 to 24 months was most beneficial for cognitive outcomes later in life. Frequent reading. There's no denying how beneficial books are in human cognitive development. In fact, the developmental benefits are even more pronounced when books become part of parental bonding activities. In a recent study, researchers found that when parents read aloud to their children, the child comes to master greater language skills and cognitive development. Continuing education. Education, in whatever form, is crucial to the development of human intelligence. In a review of studies on IQ and education, over 600,000 participants were studied to determine the effect of education on IQ levels. Researchers found that for each additional year of formal education, participants experienced an increase of 1 to 5 IQ points. If you enjoyed the material presented in the video, subscribe to the channel to not miss future videos on interesting topics to come. Thank you.